We will learn in this lecture how to create resources with Terraform. A resource in Terraform is the infrastructure object that we want to create. For example, it can be a compute instance, a virtual network, or any other infrastructure object. The first thing that we need to create resources with Terraform is a file with the .tf extension. So let's create here a file, for example, call it main, and it should be with the .tf extension. To create a resource in Terraform, we need a resource block. A block is a container of data, and the type of the block that we need here to create a resource is a resource block. We will see later some other type of blocks, like a variable block to work with input variables. So here we need a block of type resource. So here the resource keyword is used to specify the type of the block. After the resource keyword, we have to mention the provider and the resource type that we want to create. A provider is a plugin that will allow Terraform to interact with the infrastructure. There are many providers for different platforms. So for example, if you want to create resources on a cloud platform like Azure, so here you have to use the Azure provider. Here we want to create a resource locally on our system. So here we will use the local provider. And the type of the resource that we want to create here is a very simple resource, which is a file. So here we have underscore file. So here, file is the type of the resource that we want to create, and local is the provider that we will use to create this resource. After that, we have to give a name to our resource. So for example, here I can call the resource that we will create just my file. So here the resource keyword is the type of the block, and for local file, so here local is the provider that we will use, and file is the type of the resource that we will create, and my file is a name given to the resource that we will create. And now here in the body of the block, we will mention the arguments needed to create this resource. This depends on the resource that we want to create. For example, here if we go to the browser and search for Terraform, so let's go here to the providers. So here we have different providers to interact with different cloud platforms like Azure, Google Cloud. If we go here to the bottom, we find the local provider that we use to create resources locally. So if we go here to the documentation, we find here under resources, the resources that we can create using this provider. Here is the local file, which is the type of the resource that we will create in our situation. And if we go here to the bottom, here we find the required arguments that we have to mention in the body of the resource block. And here we find a set of optional arguments that we can use when we define a resource. So here we have to define the file name argument, and we can use some other optional arguments. So here we will use the file name argument, which is the required argument. So here I want to create a file in the current working directory and call it file.txt. Okay, so here only the file name is required, but we can use some optional arguments like the content to specify the content of this file. For example, I will store in this file a very simple message like, hi, how are you? So now the Terraform file is ready to create a resource, which is a file. The next step is to initialize the provider. Here Terraform will check the Terraform file and detects the provider needed to be initialized to create this resource. And to do that, we have to execute the Terraform init command. So here Terraform is initializing the provider plugins. So it installed the HashiCorp local provider, which is the provider needed here to create this resource. And you notice here that a folder called .terraform is added, which is the location of the providers. So if we explore this folder, we find here the local provider. The next step is to run the Terraform plan command to see the changes that will happen to the infrastructure. So here Terraform will tell you what resources will be created and what resources will be changed or destroyed. Here the plus sign means that the resource will be created. Here we have only one resource that will be created, which is the resource defined using this resource block. Okay, so here we find that one resource will be added and no resource will be changed or destroyed. This command is optional and it doesn't make any change to the infrastructure. And now to apply this plan, to apply those changes, we use the Terraform apply command. The Terraform apply command will apply the changes that we saw with the Terraform plan command. So here we see again the resources that will be created, and here Terraform asks you to confirm performing this action by entering yes and press enter. And here we see that the apply was completed, and so one resource was added and no resource was changed or destroyed. And here is the file created with Terraform. So it is called a file with the content, hi, how are you, as we mentioned here in the main.tf file. So that's a very simple example of creating resources with Terraform. I hope that everything is clear, and see you next time.